Hey guys, welcome back to Woods Tree Farm. I'm Phil and we are wrapping up today our first batch of spring planting here for spring 2025, our 6th year putting trees in the ground. Believe it or not, it's been 6 years already. And my son is bringing the mower over because we're just going to use that to transport a box of these trees over to where we're planting. And it's been really hot here this week, so some of these trees have dried out a bit. So we're going to make sure that they're good and moist before we put them into the ground. So these Murray cypress that we've gotten from Liner Source are shipped with soil in a pot. And like I said, they are drying out a bit. We don't have a good water source or a hose spigot or anything like that nearby. So I think this little tub of water will work just fine. And we'll just give them a dunk. And then we'll just put it right back in the box. And that will be great, putting them in the ground with the roots all nice and moist. Yeah, they want to kind of float, so make sure that one that floated gets. There you go, and then just drop them in here. So we're putting these in the ground right next to last year's Murray cypress. These were same size plants, quart size plants that went in the ground last year, and you can tell they've grown over a foot in their first year in the ground. And we actually got behind on fertilizing. They did not get fertilized most of last summer and in the fall. So they would have grown more if we kept up with that, but we didn't. And the survival rate on these is great. The only trees that are struggling over here got rubbed by deer last year, and what I found in the past is that we have about maybe a 50% and I laughed because I just saw my son trip as he tried to unload that box of trees, and he hopped up and gave me a thumbs up. Sorry to miss that, but it was funny. So here's an example of a tree that was rubbed by a deer, and what I've seen in the past is we get maybe a 50% survival rate on these trees. And when I say survival, I mean actually getting this to grow into something that might look like a nice Christmas tree. So what we'll have to do here is cut this out, get one of these branches to stand up and become the new top, and this tree might grow into a nice straight tree. If not, we'll have to cull it. But I get maybe 5 to 10% of the trees that get that go in the ground become unsellable. And I did cull just a few the other day of like 4 or 5 footer trees that got rubbed to the point where we just, you know, there's nothing there that's salvageable that will ever become a nice looking Christmas tree. So we'll just make space for new trees and move on. So in this area over here, going back a couple years ago, we did plant some Canadian fir over here. They've all died with, there were, 2 or 3 survivors. We moved them last year, the year before, over to where we have some other surviving Canadians. And then this section had just been fallow for the last couple of years. And we had some wildflowers growing in here. And we grew buckwheat in here one year and just said, we'll just kind of wait for this area to hopefully get a little bit better, the soil to get a little bit better, and try to plant some other trees. And now we just mowed everything down that was here, and we will just plant these cypress, which seem to be a lot hardier and less pickier of what type of soil they grow in. So the first row here I planted with just a shovel and the untilled ground or unprepared ground, and it was just a lot of work trying to get those trees in those holes. So yesterday we got the tiller on the tractor and tilled up a row, and that tiller goes down a good 4 or 5 inches, and then that leaves just the very bottom of our shovel full here. It's a little bit of clay underneath the tilled ground, and we can easily just throw that off to the side. So this goes a lot quicker planting this way in the prepared soil than over there in the unprepared soil. And then to make sure we get nice straight rows, the easiest way that we have figured out over the years, since we already had straight rows to start with last year's planting, we just got our 8-foot spacing with a stick. Here's an 8-foot stick. Put it down on the other planting, and then get some marking paint, make a mark on the ground, and we did that the whole way up. And then we can just keep the tractor centered on these marks, and that'll lay out our row. And then as long as we dig our trees right in the middle of this tilled row, just like we did on this one, it gives us a nice straight row without any additional verification. So if I'm just working by myself, I'll just do 4 to 6 trees at a time. You can see they've already been trimmed up of all their greenery for the last 6 to 10 inches or so, and I kind of judge that based on the size of the plant. So this plant's a little taller than the others, so I probably went up 12 inches. Some of the smaller trees I'll only go up 6. Once I have them prepped, I can come along with my shovel, and we don't need a huge hole, but I am trying to get down kind of low. You can see the clay on the bottom of that plug there, and we can always backfill with just the tilled soil, but I can go down, and then it's just 2 big steps. That's about 6 feet for me. I'm not that precise with it. I know some people are. 6 feet's what I'm looking for. Dig my next one. I can just grab one of my trees, kind of judge the height. I want this soil level with the top of the soil, so we actually need to throw a little bit back in the hole. That looks good. And then we can just backfill with anything. I tend to use, if there's firm topsoil on top of the plug, I'll break that up first. But we can really use any of this to compact around it. This is the clay that was in the bottom. This isn't great. And on to the next. Well, the family had to head out for the day, and I am left here to finish up. But they were a huge help. We got almost 200 trees done, and all I have left to do myself is, I think I counted 17 Carolina Sapphires in there, and we're going to need to break some new ground for those. And I'm going to do pretty much the same thing that we did for the Murrays over there, and we're just going to go to the very back of this field. Our other Carolina Sapphires are right here, and we'll be putting these right over here. So same general area. Once these trees are mature, we'll be able to direct people back in this vicinity if they want that type of tree. That is a wrap on our first part of spring planting. That was 330 trees in 2 partial days, and some of it was on fresh ground, some of it was filling in where some trees were cut, and that is probably what we're going to continue to do every year. As we are starting to harvest from the field, we'll continue to replant in some of those same spaces, and we do want to continue to expand until all of our open area is planted. So we've got another couple years of that still, and I've got in about 2 weeks coming in some Canaan fir again, which we've had some really poor success with in the past, but I'm willing to give it another shot. And we've got a new area over this way. It's actually in the back of the field where we planted some sunflowers last year, where the slope is north facing a little bit, and the soil over there is not nearly as dense clay as we see in other parts of the property. So I think we might have some luck with some Canaan firs over there. I'm hoping we will, because that's where we're going to put them. In the past, we've planted probably upwards of, I don't know, 15 or 1800 Canaan firs, and we have just a couple dozen left. And those couple dozen that are left are on the extreme western side of our field, where this tree line back here gives them afternoon shade. So I think because they're not getting roasted completely all day, they get a chance to kind of cool off late afternoon. I think that's the primary reason they've survived over there. But the soil over there is also slightly more sandy. It does have some red clay down underneath the sand. So even though the soil isn't as ideal as I think it could be, I think the afternoon shade over there is the difference maker. Where we're going to plant the new ones over there, they don't get the same kind of afternoon shade, but because the slope is north facing a little bit, that soil in theory won't get as hot, as dry, as quickly as other slopes that get more direct sunlight. Now this section of field where I just put these last trees, this is also north slope, but this soil here, what's just under the top 2 inches or so of topsoil, is a very dense red clay, a very wet clay, and I am not trying firs over here. In fact, our first couple years we did put some firs up along this slope. They've all died. If there were 1 or 2 or 3 survivors here and there, we've moved them up where our other surviving Canaans are. So I don't believe we're going to have much luck right here in this section with firs, which is why we're not doing them here. But I'll talk more about that in the next planting video that we do when those new trees come in. And I'll actually show you a soil sample from that slope over there, this one, and one more that I have over behind the camera. And you can see, you'll be able to see how they're a little bit different. But for now, I'm gonna wrap it up. Thanks for watching today, guys. I appreciate you. If you got any questions, you know where to leave them, right in the comments. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.